5, 4, 3, showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the KNKL Show. I am your host, Kienan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to episode 27. Today, we are going to be learning to blend the lines when we are coloring, specifically skin tones. Again, I went into an episode a couple months ago about doing flesh tones on Earthworm Jim, but I did not talk about how I go back in and I actually blend these colors together and get that texture with the brush as well. So that is what I am going to be showing you. But before I begin with that, I wanted to take a moment and say thank you to everyone who has been posting their amazing things on the Facebook. I mean, look at that. It's freaking sick. All the people, man, this is so sweet. Just to let you all know, I do my best to not only look at all these pictures, but comment on everything that is posted on Facebook. I might not be able to do that forever, but for as long as I can, I shall. And man, I'm just in awe every time I look through all of these things. So thank you all for submitting things to the Facebook and continue to do so. Now with that out of the way, we will be jumping right into our tutorial. Let us get started. And we will be joined today by the lovely Bunny Girl Ribbon. Now for those of you who have already seen this, I posted this on the League of Legends forums a little while ago. Well, it wasn't my thread, but it was somebody else's thread, and I thought the idea was really cool. So I went up and I drew pretty much some line art for it. And today, I figured it would be nice to not only color it, but demonstrate the art of blending the lines, blending the colors, and getting that texture that some of you have been wondering how I get in some of the splash arts. So we will begin. So for those of you who tuned in a couple weeks ago to the Maokai spotlight, or not the spotlight, the Maokai tutorial where we mashed off the colors, that's basically all I've done here. You have the ears on their own layer, or basically like the clothes there, the hair on its own layer, and the skin. And they're all mashed off and ready to go. So let's start with the skin. Right now it's just a gray, but that's okay. We're going to create another layer over top of that. Right click it and hit create clipping mask. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll pick our skin tone for ribbon. Let's go kind of like that peachy. This is what we call our local color, or what I like to call it. And basically that's the color that's like the true color of the skin. So let's give her a little bit of a peachy tan. That seems pretty good. And you don't want to be like this. You don't want to push it all the way to the orange. Keep it still fairly desaturated at this point. That looks good. And then what you do is, since you have that clipping mask on, you can literally just take a huge brush and just go like this. There you go. See? That was easy. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to pick your shadow color. Now, what you want to do for that is saturate it a little bit more and darken it. Hue shift it a little bit towards red. There we go. Let's do that. That looks good. And what you're going to do is grab yourself soft brush. Checking the time. Making sure we're on time. Soft brush. Now we will decide where the light source is coming from. Let's say we want overall light source coming from the top left over here, kind of beaming down on her face. So that means we are going to, forgot to change my properties back. Go figure. Let us fix that. Is that, yes, okay. Moving on. Let's go back to here. Okay. So, you're going to be shading in, basically the sides. You can do this all in fairly large strokes, right? Okay, there's going to be a big cast shadow down here, right? Big shadow there. She'll have a shadow underneath her nose and a slight cast shadow, like that. Shadows underneath the brow line and shadows underneath where the hair goes. Shadow here, shadow there. And remember, in our tutorial on boobies, to make them look right, all you gotta do is shade that line right there. See, look at that. Shade the edge of it. That wasn't so hard, was it? But, oh. Oops. And mostly this can all be still fairly rough. It doesn't have to all be perfect just yet, because you're getting the guidelines for what you want your color comp to be. This is what we call the color comp. A little shadow there. Actually, let's put more this way. More this way, and oh! And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm actually grabbing the colors back from what I've laid down. So like, if I want to paint with the skin tone, all I'm doing is when you have the brush, and then this is the secret part, when you hold down Alt, it will magically change it to your eyedropper tool. And that is going to come into play very much when we begin blending with the hard brush. But for right now, when you're doing your color comp, you can do it too. So like I've been grabbing the skin tone, kind of throwing it in there a little bit. And then when I want to go back to the shadow, I hit Alt again, click it, let go of Alt, and then I'm back to my brush, and then I have the shadow color again. So there you can see we have our basic color comp for what the skin is going to look like. But, however, I say I want to push it a little darker even. Let's go really, really saturated, really red. Just for some specific areas. Like in here. You want to think of where the light is going to have a hard time getting to, and that's going to be below the chin, right in those like crevices of the hair, on the back of the shoulder here, and underneath your little necktie thing. And probably right in here too. Eye drop. Bam. Eye drop. Every time you see that little eyedropper come up, that's me holding Alt. Alright, see how that gives us a little bit more depth? Makes it look nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move from the local color. Once you progress lighter than the local color where the light is going to be hitting, we're going to want to desaturate. So let's go up and desaturate. Hue shift a tiny bit towards yellow. Now you'll see what this does. What this is going to do is give us that real kind of skin tone. It's going to start approaching like the reflective light of the skin. So let's say the light is coming from here, so we're going to get like a shiny, I'm sure you see this in anime little things where they make the little shiny shoulders. And you can do that to an extent. And sometimes if you pick a color that's a little too intense, oftentimes what I'll do is like if I throw it down like that, like that's a little too intense for me. So what I'll do to remedy that, after I throw down the color, I'll be like, oh, I kind of like that color more. I'll hit Alt, eyedrop it right on the color that I want, and it automatically will make it less intense because I pushed down the pen with less intensity, therefore it gave me less opacity and a less intense color. A little there, and we're still working with our soft brush. A little there, a little there, a little there. Now for the nose, I want to think about that light is hitting here, so that specular, or that reflectiveness is going to be happening right around there. Same here, on the cheeks. Whoops. And if you don't like anything, that is the magic of the history. You can go back. Take it back. Okay, so see what we're doing now? Now we're creating a nice rounded model. We're using the colors and the hues to create the shape of our model, pretty much, or our person. And then, the cool thing is as you're shading and putting together your color comp, you're like, oh, I want a little bit more shadow under the eyes. Hit Alt, bam, grab that, you go to the eyelids, go a little under there, go a little under there. See? Isn't that awesome? Put a little over the edge of the shoulder. Like that. So you want a little bit more shadow, right, in this little crevasse here. You're gonna throw that in. Oh, that's a little too saturated. That's fine. Grab somewhere where the gradient looks right and you grab that color. See? So now you can see we are beginning to create the shape of Riven's face. So another thing that's going to be good to do, that's going to add some character to your skin tones, is don't make them all the same. Like on the shoulder, what you're going to want to do is, again, this is a very anime thing to do, is push it to more of like a reddish or a pink. And then kind of introduce a little bit of that in there. And what that's going to do is sort of create an illusion of subsurface scattering. And what that is when light enters your skin, it bounces around all over the place inside your little blood vessels and stuff, and then it refracts it, and it sort of takes on a little bit of a reddish glow. So that is kind of what you're simulating by introducing some reds into here. It'll be really prevalent in the shoulders, the nose, the lips, obviously, and yeah, the cheeks. Give her little rosy cheeks. And then I'm going back in and I'm softening this by basically just hitting Alt. If it's too much, I just go in and Alt click, the color that I want it to be. And then say I lost a little bit of that shine on the lips when I put in that pink. So I'll just grab the shine again and reintroduce that. See, so now you've got a little bit of difference in your skin tones. It's not all the same. And that's always really nice. Let's throw a little bit of pink on this shoulder too. There we go. And you can even go heavier with your specular too. Like say you grab your specular and be like, I want to make an even brighter one. So all you got to do is go up and desaturate. And this will give you like some really, really hot speculars. But at this point, she starts to kind of become a little bit too plasticky looking. So I might stay away from that. But maybe just a tiny one. I don't know. Subtlety is the key, especially when you're rendering skin. Give a nice hot one on the lip there. Cool. Not bad, not bad. Okay, so after this point, what I usually like to do is once I've got a color comp down that I feel is, oh, there's one more thing. One more thing with the skin. This is what's going to round it off completely and will give you that final look of what you want your skin to look like. Remember, like in the Maokai tutorial, we go, okay, this is desaturated, right? Saturated local, saturated shadows, but then we go to desaturated shadows. So you're going to take your shadow, which is this here, and you're going to, this is going to be pretty much like your reflected light. This is what's going to basically say, okay, we've gone all the way to the edge of the shadow, and then this is kind of like the final turn that shows that this goes back into space. And this will add a lot of really cool depth to your drawing. So make sure as you go to this, you want to make it lighter, a little bit lighter than that shadow, and desaturate it. And even hue shift it, why not? So now watch what happens when you put this down. Yeah, you see that? Actually, it's probably just going to be most prevalent right there. It wouldn't be hitting here really. But we can throw it in just for kicks. Let's actually even push it a little bit more. Super hue shift this. All right. So you see what that's done? Especially right here. This is the best example of what it is. Desaturated lights, you go to your local saturated, and even like some like red introduced to mimic subsurface scattering. And as that kind of turns it red. And as you go to your shadow, saturate, and then the final desaturation layer, which is your reflected light hitting the other side of your skin. And that'll give you a really nice blend and make it look realistic. It's crossing the spectrum of all saturations and color shifts and hues and everything, and it's really simple when you think about it that way. And or at least I hope it is. That's kind of how I've learned to tell myself that. And yeah, it's working pretty good so far, so sticking with it. So now we are going to be moving into how I get those hard edges and not make everything look all soft. And we will do that right now. So you're going to be switching to your hard brush on both your eraser and paintbrush. And let's throw in these eyes really quick. Let's throw in some ribbon eyes. There we go. Yeah. Alright. Alright, so this is how we are going to go about doing this. Create a new layer over top of it because we are going to begin painting. And basically, see, this is the skin layer. You want to see what it looks like without the clipping mask? Look. See, without the clipping mask, we have all this extra stuff on the outside. But when you clip it to what's behind it, automatically trims all that stuff off. So now we will just be going into the painting layer. And all I'm going to be doing now is basically taking a brush, and I'll demonstrate it mostly on her face, I'd say. Well, actually, would that be the best place to do it? I might have to demonstrate one more step before we go into this, and that's actually probably a good thing anyway. So before I actually go in and start creating the hard texture to the color, I'll go into the line layer right here. I'll lock the pixels right here with this little thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take the lines away from black, because black is always going to be like a hard contrast and it's just going to mess everything up. So when you lock the pixels and you pick the color that you want to turn the lines, like right here, it's going to be like a dark red. Goes in and look at that. It totally softens everything around it. It's very subtle, but it's really, really nice to not work with like straight black lines. And then the nice thing is you can also go in and say, oh, I don't like those lines and that noise in there. You can just grab this. You can Alt-click the color that you want and just paint over those lines. And say I don't want this line here to be as prevalent. Say grab maybe like this brown right here. And see, it'll knock it back quite a bit. But it'll still show you that, hey, you know, that's an important line. And then later you can paint over that. So yeah, let's go ahead and just hit a lot of her skin with this reddish tone. And this goes back to the line coloring tutorial with Froggy Fires. I don't know if you guys remember that one. But if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to do that, you can go watch that one too. Now you can see we just kind of softened everything. And let's go ahead and soften her hair too. No, it's not really blue, but probably not going to get to coloring her hair, so we'll just color it blue for now. If we need to later, we can always go back and recolor it. Okay, so you've seen what we've done with the lines now. We've knocked them back. And usually I tend to keep the eyes, like the actual eyelashes, still fairly dark. Keep them like this dark purple. Dark purpley. Okay, now we are ready to paint. So this is how it goes. By the time I get to this point, I've created another layer, not over top of the color layer, which is way back here, this. I'm actually going to create my painting layer. I usually call this my paint over layer, or PO layer. And I'll just name it like that, right? I'll go and pick my hard brushes. And now I'm going to begin to paint basically over top of everything that I've done so far. I'm going to be painting over the lines, painting over pretty much everything besides the bloom and stuff, but that'll come in later. For now, we are just worrying about beginning to paint this character. So what you're going to do is, let's say we want to start with rendering the nose. So this is where the Alt key comes in very, very handy. Remember, when you're working with your paintbrush and you hit Alt, it automatically changes to your eyedropper tool. And that is going to be your best friend. So I always have my thumb, pretty much. It's always going to be on the Alt key while I'm doing this. And basically I pick a size of a brush that I'm comfortable with because I'm either changing the size of my brush on the fly or I'm having my thumb on the Alt key, but never both. So I figured this is a pretty good standard brush size. So let's go in and begin rendering the face. So what you're going to want to do is pay very close attention to where these lines are, because you put those there for a reason. And the reason why they're there is they're a point of contrast, basically. So you want those lines to still read as they're there, even though they're not going to be these hard, dark brown lines. So I'll show you how to do that. And there's going to be a little bit of reflective light on the nose there. And there's going to be a little bit of a hard cast shadow there underneath, like that. And all I'm doing is I'm grabbing these colors and I'm blending them. So I'm saying, okay, a little bit more pink. You don't want that to show up that much. And a little bit more of that, a little bit more of this. And this is really the point that takes the most practice, now that I think about it. It's not something that you can just... It's almost like a technique. Like, now that I think about it, it's almost like a technique. Playing guitar. Like, the speed and rate at which you do it, it's like a muscle memory thing. But I never noticed that before. And that's kind of cool. And then what I'll do is, when I'm working with a color, see, I'm changing the color or the size of my brush on the fly. So I'm either doing that or I'm alt clicking to blend. So back to alt clicking, and I'm changing the size of my brush here. Back to alt clicking. Changing the size of my brush. Back to alt clicking. It sounds funny when you say that. Let's go ahead and blend this here. Changing the size of my brush. So that's what I'm doing. I'm alt clicking the color that I want to use, and then I switch my hand over and I'm changing the size of my brush. That's so funny to realize that that's what I've been doing this whole time. And I guess you don't really notice it until you go to teach somebody. Changing the size of my brush. Alt clicking. Changing the size of my brush. So now, from this point, all it is really just getting rid of your lines like that. You don't want those to appear there. And just smoothly, like, for the most part, the blending really is all alt clicking. Like this. And then the more you do that, and just grab those colors, it'll slowly start to become uniform. See? And most of the time you want to try not to have super tough or super hard lines, especially when you're rendering a female face. And then the rest of it just comes down to practice. Like, how did I know to put that light there? It's just a matter of just studying faces. And you just study faces, and you look at how the planes of the face basically catch light, like the little tear duct in there. Like you can see here, that's basically what's happening there. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways that you can just kind of cheat it and just kind of figure stuff out. But for the most part, yeah, the thing that's going to give you more or the most amount of experience on drawing the face is just looking at faces, drawing faces. And then eventually you'll be able to come up with some cool little tricks and easy ways to remember things. At least that's the way that I like to do it. Well, let's see. Okay, so like for instance, okay, I know that up in the eyebrow area there will actually be something that catches the light right here. Because some people think, oh, it doesn't start catching the light until it goes above the eyebrow, but in most cases, the orbit thing, ridge or whatever, actually starts catching light below the eyebrow as well. See, alt clicking, alt click. See that, and then it gives you that cool texture, but it doesn't look like a perfect gradation. And then it looks really like The reason why I like this is because it gives it a real hand-painted or handcrafted look, as opposed to when you leave everything all gradiated like this. It just looks like it was, it looks like computer fabricated, and that's literally what it is. The computer has pretty much created these gradients, and what you're doing when you do this is you're taking those gradients that the computer's created, and you are going in and hand texturizing everything yourself. And that is where the magic happens. Whoops. You want to keep in mind like this ridge here for the cheek, but obviously we don't want to keep it aligned like that. So, Alt-click, blend it, blend it, blend it, blend, 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 blend. And then depending on how strong that edge is on the cheek, it's going to make her look a little older or younger, So it's always good to have a hint of it there, but then you want to soften it. Soften it. Right here. Going to soften this. Also, there's going to be a little bit of reflected light underneath here. Just keep that in mind because that's the underside of her chin. And then you can see how I'm painting right over top of these lines, because that's eventually what you want to do. You want to get rid of these things. You want to try your best to let the colors create the lines for you. Like this hair will be not necessarily this bright blue, but the contrast of it against this brown will create that line for you. It doesn't have to be a black line anymore. And that is what makes your drawings look a little bit more finished and a little bit more professional, clean, and believable. Believe it or not. And then see, there's still a hard line there, so we'll blend that. Yeah. And see, like, you want to go in and just really carefully do that. And like when you're in doing big areas like this, oftentimes what I will do is I'll grab a soft brush. Like if it's not imperative that it needs to be like all texturized, if it's a large area, I actually will go back in with the soft brush and blend it that way. Because it's all about saving time, really. It's good to show those hard edges in some really in your focal points, which is going to be like the areas of highest contrast and brightness. It's always good to show that. But yeah, for the most part, you'll want to have a lot of texturizing going on with your cool hard brush. And that makes things look dandy. So, and then the nice thing is that you can go back and you can turn it off and see what it looked like before and after. See? I actually changed her jawline a little bit. And that's the nice thing, is that when you go back and you look at it without it and be like, oh, I kind of like the way that jaw looked before. Here's the cool part. You can go back to your paint over layer, take a soft brush or a hard brush, and you actually just erase it, and it'll go back to the way it was, and then you can start over again. Well, just in that area. Not all over again, hopefully. So yeah, let's keep that. Because the way that I like to work is I like to have a lot of the character captured in the lines. So I like to stick pretty close to how I rendered them, with the line work. So I feel like if I stray too far away from it, sometimes it'll start looking less like I had already envisioned it. So yeah, pay close attention to that. Don't be afraid to go back and try again. And let's take a little bit of this off just to show you, see, when you take away the line, still looks nice. So, I believe that will wrap up this week's KNKL show. But before we say goodbye, I would like to take some time to address the question of the week. And that is, somebody asked me, I think it was regarding a bamboo tablet, if you're working on a dual screen setup like I am, how do you get it so that your tablet works on just one of the screens instead of like stretching across both? And sometimes it does do that. I don't know exactly how to do it for Bamboo, but for the Wacom tablets, you're just going to go to your search bar right here, type in Wacom. First thing that should come up is Wacom tablet properties. So click that, and it will bring you to this lovely menu right here. Now, what you're going to want to do is click on the tab that says Mapping, and it will give you a nice little show of both your monitors. And basically you can say monitor 1, monitor 2, full, which kind of stretches it across both, which is not what I recommend because it'll make it really like, nah, just don't even do that. So basically pick which monitor you want to use. In my case, it's monitor 2, which has my Photoshop on it. And that should solve your problem. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully Bamboo has a similar way of doing that. And now I'd like to move on to the question to the audience. And that would be none other than, what is your favorite League of Legends character and why? Mine personally, obviously, is Maokai. And I like him not only because of his awesome character design, but his voice acting, his animations, everything really I feel lends to his character and tells about who he is and really makes you feel cool when you play him. So yeah, tell me what characters you play that make you feel that way, or what character is your favorite and why. And with that, I would like to, whoa, look at this. It's almost like I can put myself on here. And with that, I would like to conclude the KNKL Show, episode 27. Thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't. I am Kienan Lafferty, and I will see you guys next week.